Hi guys. Okay, I am back with an interesting topic that may or may not resonate with everyone. But for me, I wanted to talk about um, when we have our autistic children and they have siblings that are neurotypical, that are not autistic. Um, my daughter is 26 years old, and she has two older sisters. One is 35 and one is 36. The 35-year-old is my daughter and obviously her dad's. And the 36-year-old is her dad's from his previous marriage. So when Sabrina was born, uh, again, I'm Shelly, by the way. I'm talking about my adult autistic daughter, Sabrina, is 26, and I live in Central Florida. And I'm just wanting to touch on siblings and that type of thing. So, when my daughter was born, she was already, there was already differences there. There was a 9 and 10 year difference between her and her older siblings. So, um, I went through this whole, I'm not going to make my older daughter a babysitter. I don't want her having a younger sister to, dictate her life. Like I remember not wanting to kind of make her feel like she's responsible for a younger sibling. So fast forward, I guess about 4 or 5 years when I found out that Sabrina was autistic. Her sister at that time was about 13, maybe 14. And, and a lot of time was being spent on my autistic child, which is typical, right? As parents, we have to devote some more time and energy to our autistic kids. Um, trying to get them therapies and speech and occupational therapy and what's going on. And sometimes even just fighting for that diagnosis, right? We have to scratch and fight for people to listen to us sometimes. And then worried about, like if you're a working mom, you don't want to put them in daycare because sometimes it's just not an option, right? And I was fortunate. My mother watched my daughter, my youngest, my autistic daughter, and my oldest at that time. So, you know, but I do remember my older daughter who, the cheerleader, and she played softball and, debate, and she still debates me. She still makes me crazy. So my older daughter did pull that card sometimes, like, oh, well, you wouldn't say that if it was Sabrina, or, oh, Sabrina doesn't have to do the dishes, and, this kind of thing. Sometimes she was right, oh, you're so soft on her. And sometimes, she was right. I was being too soft on my autistic child at the time. And sometimes she was just pulling a card because she didn't want to do something, right? I'm sure other parents can relate to that. Like she just didn't want to be bothered, whatever. And my older daughter was getting into, dating and boys. And like I said, she was like getting around like 14. She was in ninth grade. And it's such a weird balance, right? You don't want to not saddle, but you don't want to put too much on that older child or the child who's not autistic. But you find yourself so wrapped up with your autistic child. I do remember in my group, like I said, my daughter is high functioning. So in my group that I had, if any of you don't know, there was an autism group that my daughter belonged to, and I met a lot of other moms, and we had kids from low functioning to very high functioning, everything in between. Great, amazing experience. I recommend an autism group to everybody. But yeah, it was a good experience. But I know, obviously, kids that, again, my terminology, again, guys, I'm older. I don't know the terminology now for autism, higher functioning, lower functioning, grade 1, 2, like, I don't know how all that goes now. But there were kids who obviously needed way more help and way more assistance than, let's say, than my daughter or some of the other kids. Or some kids didn't need as much, maybe attention as my daughter did. And that was okay. They're all okay. All these kids are great, by the way. I grew to love each and every one of my kids in that group. So I was fortunate. So anyway, to me, it's very, very hard to balance that, right? To make these non-autistic children understand, hey, your sister or your brother needs this or that, or this is what's going on, or this is why we're doing that. And it's a really hard balance. What I did, I'm not a doctor or therapist. This is just what I did. I never made my daughter's sisters, they didn't have to take her anywhere. They didn't have to watch her while I went out, or nothing like that. If my mother could babysit when I went out, that was great. If not, very seldom did I leave Sabrina with her older sisters. And I'm not talking about like if I'm in the shower, I tell her, hey, watch your sister, or, if I'm running to get a gallon of milk, okay, watch your sister. I mean, obviously those things happen. But as far as like really, hey, I'm gonna go out for 4 hours, or I'm going on a date or dancing, you need to watch your sister. That didn't go on. I didn't make it her responsibility to watch her sister. I didn't want any resentment there. I didn't want, her to feel like some type of way about her sister, her autistic sister, like, I'm saddled, not that they ever would, but for me, I didn't want that to ever be a thing, right? Like, I didn't want her to ever feel like, her sister was her responsibility. And that worked well for me. I know there are moms, even single moms out there, that can't do that, right? You have to have your other children help you. And I get that totally. Like I said, I was fortunate. I had my mom, who was a retired nurse. So I was really lucky. And Sabrina was a little higher functioning, and Sabrina has to have private, quiet time. So, she would go sit in her room, literally, I'm not even kidding, at 4 or 5 years old, and she'd watch a little Disney princess video and she would not move. Now, I get, I had some kids in my group, boy, you let them go, they're out in the middle of the road, like you got to be on them. That was not my kid. My kid didn't leave my side. I could put her somewhere, sit down, come back an hour, she's right there where I left her. And I know on some levels that's a gift, right? Because some of the kids that I have seen, these poor moms, they run ragged after these kids. These kids will just in a shot, they're in the street, right? And my heart goes out to those moms, because that's a whole separate set of challenges. And you may need siblings. Hey, watch your sister. I need other eyes in the house, right? And I get that. I'm just saying, for me, or maybe somebody else has other ideas that they did. For me, what I did is I just made sure that my autistic child was my responsibility, not her siblings. And especially now that, they're 26, 35 and 36, they're very close. In that, what I mean is they never felt that, that squeeze of, you did more for her or me, or, so it kind of worked out. One was never responsible for the other one, and another thing I was thinking about too is, when friends, my older daughter would bring her friends over, and especially when my youngest, my autistic daughter, was like, 2, 3, 4, 5, and my older daughter, her friends, they were, 11, 12, 13, 14, my daughter's friends were great. They were great with Sabrina, my older daughter, were great with Sabrina. They just thought she was the cutest thing. Sabrina was very quiet. She had a little thumb baby, she had her little thumb for her security, and she was quiet. I didn't make my daughter, I didn't say you have to include your little sister. If you're going in the pool, you have to take your sister. I never did any of that. If the kids were in the pool and Sabrina wanted to go, I took her in the pool. It was never forced on the older girls. So that was just a little tidbit. I don't know that that'll help anyone. If it does, like I said, I understand there are situations where you have no choice, especially if you're a single mom. Side note, I noticed that in my group, I don't know if this is even a thing. I just noticed in my circle that I had in the group of moms I had, I would say most of the autistic kids were being raised by a step parent or single mom. I had like one single dad, just one poor little single dad. It was mostly the dads that like skedaddled, and it was the moms. That we do, right? Moms end up with a lot on their shoulder. I'm not saying it's the rule, I'm not saying it never happens that dad has that responsibility. I'm just saying that by and large, it's the moms. So I didn't see a lot of couples that stayed together. My niece, her youngest daughter is autistic, cute like unreal, like crazy cute. Yes, I'm a little biased, but anyway, her and her husband, they have two girls, and they are just like in lockstep, solid, and it's a great thing to see. They work together, and they're bringing their girls up, but you don't see that a lot in the autism community. I didn't see it a lot. I see usually, unfortunately, that kind of strain and that kind of stress either tears you apart, or one or the other can't handle it, or that type of thing. But in any case, that's it for now. Like I said, I could about autism all day and all night. But anyway, any comments, let me know. I'll take them. Any ideas, hints, any questions, feel free. And I will see you in part 3000. So have a good night. Bye.